There are some historic changes coming to the real estate market this month. How does that affect you? Hey friends, Trevor here. I'm sure by now we've all seen the headlines talking about the upcoming changes on August 17th to the real estate market, dealing with real estate agents' commission and representation. It is super important you understand how this affects you as the consumer, especially if you're planning to buy, sell, or invest in the near future. I did a video really quickly just breaking down the settlement recently, but I wanted to do another quick video as a bit of preparation for the changes that are about to take effect. Don't worry, I'm not getting into the controversy today. I purely want to make sure you understand what's coming. As a real estate agent who values transparency and educating my clients really well, I want to make sure everyone is ready for this historic shift in the market. So let's jump in. First, let me quickly point out the biggest elements that are changing, and then we'll get into how this affects you. By far, the most publicized change has been in regards to buyer-agent commission. Historically, in most states, buyers were not responsible for paying their agents out of pocket, but a portion of the proceeds from the seller was designated towards their commissions at closing. This is still totally allowed, so don't believe the hype that this is just going away. The big change is that it can no longer be advertised in the multiple listing services that agents use to advertise their listings to other agents. So the only way now for an agent to get paid is either by negotiating that commission from the seller or having you pay it directly as their buyer agent. Gone are the days of easy promises of getting commissions simply because they were stated in the MLS. The second most important change is that members of the Realtor Association are required to have a buyer agency agreement in place prior to showing any property to a new buyer. Whoa, what's this about an agency agreement? An agency agreement is the legal document that we put into writing so that we can actually be your representative in a real estate transaction. It also serves the purpose of establishing our expected commission rate for our services. Now you might can see where this gets a little sticky. Signing an agency agreement does obligate your agent to serve you correctly, but it also obligates you to pay their commission if they can't get it from anywhere else. Surprised? Actually, it's always been this way. The difference is that now the agency agreement is required up front, whereas in the past we can operate a little more loosely and not have that signed until we're actually submitting an offer. So it's worth cautioning you. If you're looking for buyer representation, you want to make sure you really trust this agent before you sign an agreement with them, locking yourself into paying them a commission. Plus, you'll need to make this decision now before you see any properties. Let's roll back to the commission change to see better how this affects you. Again, it is still completely possible for a buyer agent representing you to negotiate their commission that you owe them from the seller and not from you. That way you aren't responsible for anything extra out of pocket at closing. Traditionally, you paid between 1.5 to 3% in transaction and closing costs based on the purchase price. So it's always been expected for the buyer to pay out between $6,000 to $12,000 in around a $400,000 purchase price. This depends largely on the loan costs and also on the price of the investigations. The commission for your agent was retrieved from the seller's proceeds and agreed upon in the MLS prior to you ever viewing the home. This is now going away, which means there's an extra step for your agent now in this process. They will need to arrange compensation with the seller prior to your offer ever getting submitted. You as the consumer need to understand that this can and will affect your offer. If your agent is submitting an offer on behalf of you and they are requesting the full commission they've put in their agency agreement with you, and the seller refuses or the seller counters with a lower offer of compensation, who do you think could be on the hook for making up that difference? So our 1.5% to 3% scale is now starting to look a little bit more like a potential 1.5 all the way up to 6% scale. And this is all based on the response of the seller and the commission that you've agreed to in your agency agreement. To give a case in point, recently I was submitting an offer on behalf of one of my clients. The seller was willing to offer something lower than what was in our buyer agency agreement. So we had to negotiate our terms based on this pushback from the seller and try to get them to come up with the rest of my commission so my buyers didn't have to push it out of pocket. We ended up asking for additional concession, and now that concession can be applied to pay for the rest of my commission. But the short of it is, it absolutely affected our offer and could have been the difference of whether we got it accepted or not. A couple of really important things to be careful about. If you're talking to a buyer agent about representing you, you really want to express your financial limitations in that initial conversation. A good agent will be able to steward your limitations. They can communicate effectively in each situation to make sure you aren't surprised by any cost at the end of the day that you weren't expecting. Smart agents are going to be able to strategically represent you so that you'll be effective in this market based on your unique purchasing ability. And it's worth mentioning, just because you can't afford to also pay a buyer agent commission out of pocket doesn't mean that you should get out of the buying game. Or I'll also caution that you should try to pull this off without an agent. Be honest with your agent about your abilities. Ask questions to make sure you're protected and you're being effectively served. And ultimately decide who you're going to work with based on this knowledge. Going without an agent is dangerous. You can run into a massive appraisal discrepancy, or you may miss major red flags about a property and have to forfeit deposits to get out of the contract, or have to move forward with a home that has major issues. Now let's talk about the lesser known ruling that was part of this settlement. That's actually a pretty big deal. Agency agreements have historically been a little looser when it comes to the buyer-client relationship. Now they are required even before you see a single home. That's a big trust leap you're taking with an agent, but it's important that you understand the implications. Signing an agency agreement does obligate you to pay a buyer agent commission if the agent fulfills their duties. And those duties aren't to be your friend. Here's exactly how they are written in our North Carolina Buyer Agency Agreement. Feel free to take a screenshot of these. We like to abbreviate this with the acronym LOADS: loyalty, obedience, accountability, disclosure, and skill. Our basic responsibility as your agent are these things, but that doesn't mean an agent will be willing to sacrifice their commission if you decide you can't pay it. It's important to understand what you're signing on for and that this is a business agreement. The buyer agent isn't planning to work for free, so you need to be completely honest with them about your financial situation and to make sure they are capable and willing to work with you based on this information. It's a pretty tough jump if you've just met them. Most agents would prefer an exclusive buyer agency representation, which means you're only allowed to work with them and you cannot go and work with any other agents. To get out of this type of agency agreement, you have to terminate it officially, or you have to let it expire before you can start looking at houses with a different agent. However, you can ask the agent to see if they would be open to operating under a non-exclusive buyer agency agreement initially, meaning you can legally work with them or any other agent should you decide. Some agents might allow this, others might refuse. It's also worth discussing with them up front if they're allowed to be flexible with the commission that's agreed upon. The market, and not the agents, will inevitably dictate the percentages of commissions that are being offered. So if the market is really hot and sellers are offering lower commissions, is that agent willing and also capable within their firm to lower their commission rate so that you can be more effective? I'm gonna stop myself because I could jump into a lot of strategy and opinion and controversy, but for today, I just wanted to hit these highlights so that you understand how this affects you. I hope I've given you some helpful things to chew on in regards to some of these pretty important changes that are going into effect on August 17th. It goes without saying, but I absolutely want to be this type of flexible and transparent agent that I've been talking about. This new shift is going to require a lot of fresh strategy and an openness to keep learning and trying new things as we figure out what's going to make you, the buyer, most effective. Commissions could change dramatically. Lawsuits will inevitably ensue, but I also try to go above and beyond to make sure my clients don't get blindsided and are well informed each step of the way in their purchase transaction. So if there's any way that I can help you navigate your future purchase or sale, I'd be so happy to jump in and serve you excellently. I'll leave my info in the description below. Please reach out. Have a wonderful week, friends, and we'll see you in the next video.